I know there's a lot going on, and for a lot of people in the UFO world, they're rolling their eyes because there was such a beautiful pause in the UFO world without the likes of Jeremy Corbell, who you either love him or you can't stand him, one of the two. And I don't mind the guy. I really don't. I just like teasing the entire thing. But he's back, and he's all
He's
over the
back.
place once again.
He's back, and I will say, just in the effort of full full disclosure, which is a funny thing to say here, I am a Jeremy Corbell fan. I do like the guy, and I've talked to him a teeny bit over email, and I like him well enough. But yeah, no. But the thing is that this is what I want. This is basically the main thing I want to talk about is that we are at a point right now where every single thing that comes out becomes an attack surface for everyone involved. And so like in this case, like as much as I like Jeremy, I agree with a lot of people. And when I saw that he was going to be interviewed, I was like, I was a little nervous, I will admit. And honestly, like I was kind of blown away. Like I thought he did outstanding, and the way he diffused the some of the comments in a very polite, friendly way that wasn't abrasive at all. Clearly, Jeremy has gotten a lot of training. If you're listening, Mr. Knapp, thank you. But the thing that's very interesting about it is that depending on what version of it you watch, you are going to get a different message, because some of them are 8-minute clips, some of them are 4-minute clips, some of them start off with X-Files montages, completely cliche, ridiculous X-Files montages. Some of them don't. And so this is the problem. It's what I'm talking about, is we're now at a point where even if the core product, in this case, what Jeremy said, is actually good, which, let's face it, the stuff we get isn't always all that good. But in this case, it actually is. He did a really good job. And even with that good kernel of data, what we get is basically both sides claiming that it completely represents their argument this entire time.
Mm-hmm.
And
what was the Jeremy talking about this time?
well, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Please.
No, it was really nice. Was it? He did not. He was probably the least agendaed version of Jeremy that I've seen. In that they really kind of drove a lot of the interview, as you'd hope, and just doesn't only happen. And so they were able to ask a lot of questions. Like, for example, one of them asked, if we know for a fact these things are real, and if we know for a fact that humans are being biologically impacted by them, like how worried should we be, like in our day-to-day lives? And asked it in a very realistic way. And Jeremy answered. He goes, "Why? Honestly, I don't think you should be. I think it's a very, very rare occurrence, but it's obviously happening. We have it documented, and so we better be throwing a bunch of money and science at it to figure out what's going on." Right. And it was great. I mean, he did a really good job of offering rebuttals to, and there were some ones where, they were clearly trying to drive him to a silly place. Like one of them asked, if there was some, frequency of, when they show up, like, for example, after the pubs close. Right now, as a side note, it's actually true. If you look at the statistics across the United States, there are some interesting patterns having to do with evenings, but it has nothing to do with bars closing. It has to do with people going out and looking at the sky after they have dinner, right? So, so the point is that but the thing was, is that they covered. What I was going to say was that when the guy made the comment about that, Jeremy basically, came back with a very quick rebuttal, and he's like, yeah, we actually do find that they usually show up on Wednesday evenings. Wasn't that brilliant, right? It was perfect.
That is kind of brilliant.
And he delivered it completely. I mean, it was perfect. And honestly, the two people interviewing didn't get it. It was beautiful.
Of course not.
It was beautiful. It was beautiful. But like I said, if you watch it and you watch the ones with like the X-Files montage that they put in front of it, you enter into that interview in a different mindset, than if you did with a different a previous montage. And so even when you have something that's actually good content, where it was just kind of a basic conversation about, like the guy asked, well, isn't it still possible these are adversarial devices? And Jeremy, like, he shut that down in actually a very polite, very concise way. And he was, this was a, kind of like from the Pooh story, this was a newer, happier, friendlier, less bouncy, Jeremy, right? And so yeah, it was good stuff. But the problem is that once again, not only do we have people taking different angles at it, but a lot of this is all wrapped around these 1,500 pages of FOIA documents that were released. And for those that aren't aware, I believe those, when did those dump, Dave? Was that 3 days ago?
No, but last week. It was last week.
Was it last week? Okay, so it was last week. So for those that aren't aware, just real quick, it was a large dump of documents that was delivered via FOIA, and these documents covered a tremendous amount about biological effects. And so that is what is kind of, I believe, the catalyst for why Jeremy is suddenly on all these news broadcasts. It's basically to join up with the release of those 1,500 documents and provide some continuity between the story arc, is essentially what I'm seeing. And he's actually been trained and he's doing better. It's awesome. Go Jeremy. But the thing is that it's not as simple as just putting an X-Files montage in front of it, right? Because these documents, one, they cover all their sources. Okay, and depending on what decade it was, some of those sources were not necessarily reputable sources, and it doesn't mean they were held with any weight. It just means that they were considered as part of data. But it includes a lot of periodicals from the 60s and the 70s that were not well viewed later on, and so people are using that to call a bunch of shade on the research. It does, and then it also. Which, honestly, I don't even know like how much I'm really comfortable talking about, to be very honest with you. But it also gets into the pregnancy aspect of it, and that's not only is it a very difficult topic, but it's a very pertinent one for a lot of folks. And we finally get a little bit of documentation that's been acknowledged as something, whatever something is, right? That's as far as anyone will go. It's something. Congratulations. We get that, and then there's kind of like this. I don't know. It just kind of feels like a pass off in a way. But the thing is that a lot of this is happening not because of I think anyone driving it from the top. It's more from I think parties within our system pushing.
Well, let me interrupt you here for a second, because I got a ton of questions that I want to ask you, John. Number one, for people who may not know Jeremy Corbell, why is there such controversy around him in the UFO field?
Because of Mickey Rourke. No, I'm kidding. It's not just because of Mickey Rourke. And no offense to Mickey Rourke. Basically, Jeremy is a documentary filmmaker, and he is a documented filmmaker. I mean, that's what he does. The fact that he's gotten wrapped up in UFOs is somewhat orthogonal, right? Though it is something he clearly has passion for. And essentially, he is the one that produced the Bob Lazar documentary. He's the one that has become the kind of self-proclaimed protege of George Knapp. And no, I'm not jealous. And he's but he's essentially been a very vocal and a very aggressive and a very abrasive vocabulary person. and so he's been a little rough around the edges, and he got involved in the whole Storm Area 51 thing, and he's just, and because of his attachment and his self-proclaimed loyalty to Bob Lazar and Bob Lazar's story, Jeremy becomes a lightning rod for all of that back and forth.
Okay, so the fact that he's back in the media again, there were some questions last year when he was in the media, where he was given some UFO videos that were claimed to be, UAPs from hovering around United States Navy ships. And I believe there were 4 videos. The first 3, the Pentagon claimed as real UAP, that they didn't know what they were. But the 4th, the Pentagon refused to claim, which technically, in my opinion, looked like helicopters hovering with their lights flashing in the background. This gentleman is, he is very bombastic, and I mean that in a positive way. He's very passionate about the subject, but you get to social media and it gets, the minute Jeremy Corbell's name is mentioned, it gets, if you want to start a quick fight on UFO Twitter, you just mentioned Jeremy Corbell, and it's on.
A lot of it comes down to the fact that he has a supreme level of confidence in a bunch of things that other people have zero confidence in, and it pisses them off. And that's a lot of it. It really is. They don't like the fact that he comes on so strong, feeling so strongly about his opinions. Most people feel that you should take a more open-minded approach, even to your own stuff. But when you're a documentary filmmaker, that's not what you do.
No, definitely not. We're going to continue the talk here, because there is a lot on UFO Twitter going on right now, and giant arguments regarding this DIRDS report that was released with the 1,500 pages, especially with the way the experiencers are being trounced by many skeptics and people of strong opinion on Twitter right now. And I want to get your take on that when we return with the Unbiased UFO report. We have our good friend, the fedora-wearing Jon Hudson, here hanging on out with us. Human Carl is here in the chat room. Not to be confused with Alien Carl. We love our Human Carl. We'll be back for the final half hour of Spaced Out Radio when we return. I love it when Human Carl's here. I do.
I have to say, I really think one of the good things that I've gotten out of this whole experience of interviewing, of investigating all this stuff, is that most of my instincts when it comes to video were false, and that essentially you really can't tell anything from a video without doing a tremendous amount of technical analysis. And I've always had this kind of belief that that there was a, because like when you're an artist and you're creating stuff, there's this weird point where you're shifting colors and paints where it just kind of, it'll click, and like it's weird, it'll just click, and it's like boom, that's reality. Oh my gosh, like that's how it is, and yeah, I don't know. To me, it's just the way all this is playing out. It's fascinating.
I think it's awesome. Mm-hmm.
Certainly very, very interesting.
I think so too.
I'm a little worried about. Yeah, that's one thing I want to talk about. Is I'm a little worried there's going to be a backlash, but we'll see.
In regards to what?
The data in that report.
Well, I don't think so. Because everybody's literally focusing on the experiencers, right?
Did you watch that video I sent you?
Yes.
Dude, that was bad.
Well, I will save when I have to say when we come back on the air.
Fair enough. Totally.
And there's a good chance that this week's Dave 101 is going to be on that. Very, very good chance.
Now you said the guest you had on tonight, her book is on Kindle. You said
Yes, $4.
I get some of the best, most amazing book suggestions from like this show and Coast and like all these other places where it's like it's really it's amazing. It's amazing how many.
I still, man, have troubles buying a book for a tablet.
But
No,
it's 2022 now, buddy. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
I know.
That argument.
I still like having books on the shelf, man.
Okay. All right. I mean, look, I got books on the shelf, like right behind me, but I have books on the shelf where I've only read them via, audiobook or visual book on a tablet, and I only keep the hard copy for reference. Or because it's got a pretty spine. Or because it's old. I love old books.
That's the one thing I always thank my ex-wife for. And I don't thank her for much. Well, besides my daughter, I never read as a kid. Like, I hated reading as a kid. And I would always, when my ex-wife and I got together, I would always see her reading books. She was always reading. And I, being a little snarky 22-year-old, what the hell are you reading for? Just watch TV or something like that. And then she told me, she's like, no, I love a good book. And she got me addicted to reading.
Well, let me just say, I'm very glad that the influence went that way and not the other way. It would have been very sad to find out that she gave up books and started slipping on TV all day.
Yeah, no, I'm very thankful for it too.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, I always loved books, but I was one of the people that had a stack of books that I've been trying to read.
Rose is in my corner. I've never purchased a book for a tablet. It just seems wrong. I agree. All right.
Now you get so much more for it, though, too.
Hold on, buddy. Thank you to Black Dragon ×2, Surf Jair ×3, Vaughn and Terry for the amazing super chats. Very much appreciated. Go check out our new swag at spacedoutradio.com and our store. Just click the shop button. It's all right there, including the brand new Woo hats as of tonight. And here we go. We rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read Shirky Poo's Newswire. Check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. We continue on tonight with the Unbiased UFO Report. The fedora-wearing Jon Hudson returns. And John, last week when the DIRDS report came out, and we were talking about all of these experiences that the government was looking into people having. Well, I'll tell you, this has turned the Twitterverse into a battlefield once again with the skeptics, the non-believers, and those who don't trust anybody but themselves, absolutely carving this report for looking into the claims that experiencers are having. Now, the experiencers are trying to fire back, but, much like anything, when the Twitter trolls come out, there's no sense.
Well, and the thing is that, I mean, we have to remember that uh, there's no behavior on Twitter that is new. You know, the thing is that, you know, it's where we see it because it's on stage, but essentially the kinds of things that people are reacting to on Twitter are the exact same things that certain groups will react to in real life. So it is a canary in the coal mine, in a way, you might say, of things that, you know, that are explosive. And the
I,
thing is, so, oh no, sorry, just real quick, I was going to say is that, to me, what I was saying earlier and what you just said a minute ago, just it's more and more evidence for the fact that you have people with entrenched views that have absolutely no interest in changing their views, and they're looking for are, you know, are stars to put on their paper and clubs to beat the competition with. And so every time a new data set comes out, they just pour through it with those glasses on. What of this can I use to support mine, and what of this can I use to make him look bad? And they just and I think we've just gotten to this really bad place where that's what people are doing. And I think it's evident, and I think it's horrible. I think people need to really think about what they're doing.
there is a great amount of naivety when it comes from people who've never experienced the phenomena and not understanding what it's like to have something so personal and profound happen to you that it changes your entire life, sometimes for the good, sometimes for the bad. And what we see happening here on Twitter, whether it's Stephen Green, and these are all friends of the show, Stephen
That's what's
Greenstreet,
the hard. That's what's the hard part, Dave. That's what's
you know.
killing me, is I'm seeing people saying things that people that I liked a lot, and I'm like,
Mhm.
whoa, you know, like
Well,
that's,
you know
oh
what?
man.
I don't mind calling him out a little bit. Michael Huntington, who's a friend of this show, been on numerous times. Okay, Stephen Greenstreet, as we said, Mick West, who's been on this show, a number of people who have been on this show who have been highly, highly offended, if we could say that, by this Dirge report, even
Yeah,
bringing up the
I know.
unconscionable, which is the experiencer. Now, for the most part, these are people who want scientific recognition, trying to figure out how these proclamations work. They want more
Sure.
evidence. They don't want anecdotal stories, you know. But in the meantime, I can understand the want for for real proof rather than anecdotal stories. But you know
Oh
what?
my God, yes.
The people who are experiencing this phenomena don't know when it's going to happen. They can't all of a sudden, when they're about to be taken, say to little, you know, Mo the Gray, "Hey, Mo, can you stop for a second while I just, you know, put my phone on record here? And I need you to move a little bit to the left. You're just out of screen a little bit. I'm only getting half your gray head." Okay. Like, you can't do that. And the naivety and the ignorance that is being shown, and this is nothing I wouldn't say to their faces, but the naivety and the ignorance that is being shown for people who never asked for this phenomena to happen to them is obtuse thinking.
Well,
It's
and
very
it is, and what's really, what I find very interesting about it is that you'll see people who normally have well reasoned minds. They have well reasoned approaches to things, and then they will get to a topic that they immediately have so much disdain for that they drop all of their bias guards completely, and they go to all the old logical fallacies they used when they were school children, and it becomes this whole, like, you know, personality contest. And, you know, how could you ever believe that person because he lied 6 times in 1973? You know, like, I mean, it's insane. It's absolutely insane.
it very much is, and I don't think it paints a very good picture. You know, instead of making fun of the fact that the government was looking into these experiential phenomena, how about looking at the other side and saying, "Wow, I can't believe they are taking potential pregnancies seriously. I can't believe they're taking bloody noses seriously. I can't believe they're taking concussion-like syndromes seriously, or PTSD or something along those lines. Until you have had it happen to you, shut up. Shut the hell up. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
gonna get a
hard.
little. I'm gonna get a little angry here for a second, because I am sick and tired of people. Where's the proof? Give me proof. Okay, you don't get proof. You don't know unless you've stood in someone's shoes who has actually had that experience. Whether it's getting, needles put in your eyeballs, or anal probed, or whatever, we make fun of it because it's fun to make fun of it.
Well, it
Okay.
helps us deal with the fear.
Absolutely. But until you've experienced the nightmare of having, your body used without your consent for whatever it is, it's wrong. It's wrong to treat it. Look, the subject matter may be funny, okay, and very easily manipulated. And look, I'm not saying there aren't people out there who aren't trying for their 15 minutes of fame in order to make something happen. But what I am saying, John, is this: the majority of people out there who have had some sort of horrific experience with extraterrestrials would not wish this on their worst enemy. Not at all. Do you think Whitley Strieber, when he went public about his anal probing from aliens, do you think that he would wish that on anybody who criticizes him? Not a hope in hell.
No, it's
Right?
actually one that tells if someone has actually either been an experiencer or has done enough research. Is they hit that tipping point where you realize that if assuming abductions are real, you would not want that, right? There's not a shiny fun thing that gets described by people, right? It's a very different perspective from the fantasy, Now, and the thing that's hard, Dave, is that well, I completely understand your sentiment, and I think it's very justified. The problem is that that is the whole reason why personal stories have no place in science, because it's impossible for anyone telling their story to not take it personally, and you have a right to. And if someone is offensive about your own story, they're attacking your story, and you're going to defend it, and that's completely within your right. And that's why essentially no one should be sharing their personal stories. You should only be looking at each other's stories, because this is the whole, like, you can't go into any kind of a science environment and say, yeah, and I'm also a subject. You don't do that, right? It's like it's a very dangerous slippery slope that we play, and so we can't evaluate data in the same way we normally would, because now we have to be concerned about offending someone or hurting someone's feelings. And let's face it, in a lot of cases, how we've offended them and how their feelings have been hurt are completely healthy and completely justified, and should be respected. So how do you deal with that, right? It's a very vexing problem.
No, I understand that, but for the majority of the experiencers out there, the science means sweet nothing. It means sweet nothing, John. And I realize this is where you and I may agree to disagree, and that's healthy conversation. It really is. But for those who have, and maybe I'm putting my heart out there a little bit too much because I am an experiencer myself, as you know. Okay. But for look, how many times do you have to be called as an experiencer a liar? Okay, you got podcasts now out there. Anybody who's had an experience, liars all over UFO world. Okay, you weren't there. You weren't there. I've been called out many a times in our own chat room here, John, for people
Dave,
trying to say to me, "Hey, that stop talking crap about what happened with you and that Samantha lady." Oh, really? I didn't know where you were in the bushes with us.
no, this is why why I said what I said. This is why the stuff that Jay King and other guys are doing is so important, because essentially we know there are good studies that have been done that show that in many cases it is the lack of belief
Mm-hmm.
by their trusted people that do more harm to victims of sexual assault than the actual act itself. It is the fact that you are not believed that does the most psychological damage to not only yourself, but the way you view all of your relationships. So it doesn't matter what the subject matter is. You have an experience like this. This is now the world you're exposed to. And we want to talk about that in the context of UFOs and Twitter? You know, come on. I mean, that's just not realistic. This is not a subject. I mean, this is not fair to people. No one can do that well.
But the story is they're looking at it. You can't poo-poo the story just because you don't believe in it. You know, it's like what we complain about with the Bigfoot community, where this is a monkey, this is the great ape. Okay.
Oh no, dead on. Dead on.
You cannot eliminate the process. And the process of the paperwork from the Pentagon says this is what people are allegedly having happen to them, and we are looking into it. That's the story. Making fun of the fact that they're looking into that or where the sources came from is irrelevant.
Oh, it's irrelevant. So well said, Dave. Yes, and even I just now got myself so caught up about the emotion that I was doing it myself. You're dead on, and the thing is that if you really think about it, if you think about some of those periodicals that were mentioned that people are making fun of, those were valid sources for certain subgroups, and so if they had not been looking at them, it would have been bad science. They had to have been evaluated, and if they evaluated them and didn't include them in their references, then they're violating research ethics. So the fact that they're all in there is a good thing. I know everyone likes to poke fun, but it's actually a very good thing. It means they did their job.
I would agree. You know, but follow the story for what it's worth. Your opinion means nothing. You know, and whether it's Stephen Greenstreet or Michael Huntington or a number of, I don't want to call them trolls, because they're not. I think they bring a lot of meaningful debate to the subject.
No, they just get emotional. I mean, it's very human.
But you cannot shut down what is happening to people. The story is, like I said, I'm sounding like a broken record here. The government is exploring this information, and we should all be shocked to find out that it actually went public, like you and I talked about last week. Instead of making fun of this crap and saying, well, look at the waste of time and money this is, you know, what science is there? They're using the National Enquirer or an article from Penthouse on a person who is an experiencer. Like,
that's the thing, is it
you're being petty.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that the whole idea that you can draw conclusions from this is so immature. I mean, because let's face it, they didn't, and they had the full data set, right? So we're getting a subset of that data set, and everyone's trying to say all this should be doing, realistically, those 1,500 pages really should be a sampler buffet, right? Like when you go to like a beer place and they bring you a sampler of drinks, right? This is hey, look, these are all the places you should now go actually dump real money and real people and do some real research on, right? This isn't the end point. These are the beginning points for this research.
John, I couldn't agree with you more. I think you were absolutely nailing it on the head there, and great work. And I think we got time for one more subject here that you had brought up. This is that was the final part of it, was the ugly part of UFO Twitter. Yeah, we will get to that. The fedora wearing Jon Hudson, very much appreciate you coming on in once again for another emotionally based, emotionally charged, unbiased UFO report. We will talk to you in a couple of nights' time. Let's get to Shirky Poo's news.